Good evening, folks. Welcome to LPGWV, and I'm LPGWV Kevin. Welcome to my inaugural debut on the main channel, and I'm happy to bring you some exciting Pokemon updates. So, if you've been playing Pokemon Go for any particular time, you're aware that we have EX raids that are invite-only special level 5 raids, and recently there's been a bit of a shakeup. So, as long as EX raids have existed, there's been one Pokemon that you can get through that process, which has been Mewtwo. For the last month, Mewtwo, however, has been in various level 5 gyms, and starting this week, Niantic has moved Deoxys to the Pokemon Ex Raid level 5 raids, and today was the first day that those official invites were active. So we have some footage from the Ex Raids today, and we'll talk a little bit about that as the night goes on. So we had several issues with the Ex Raid system in the last week. So there were many people who received what turned out to be incorrect Ex Raid invites, and they showed up last Friday at various level 5 raid sites around the world, only to discover that there was no Deoxys present, and they were actually just fighting regular level 5 raid bosses. Niantic was pretty quick to jump on top of that. They apologized, sort of, retracted those Ex Raids, but the trouble was, they also retracted ones that may have also been issued in error. So the only original Ex Raids should have been for October 1st and October 2nd, but there were people who were showing up at their estimated raid times last Friday. So there's been particular problems with the app really from its inception, and this is kind of just one more for those pile. But overall, it's a free game that's a lot of fun to play, and so complaints are should be limited in that regard. With the new Ex Raid system, they also announced that you would be able to invite an additional player to join with you. So one of the complaints about the Ex Raid system was that they were invite only. So a raid is limited to 20 people at a time, and the Ex Raid system was even more limited, and it was to players who were raiding at places that were Ex Raid eligible. Now the breakdown was pretty fair. If you'd only had a bronze of the 3 tiers metal, bronze, silver, and gold, that made up over half of the invites. So you really didn't have to go terribly frequently, but you had to go at least once. The trouble was those level 5 raid Pokemon have a catch rate of under 50%. If you're throwing excellent curveballs with a golden raspberry, it's something like only 47%, which is pretty low. So what people were having problems doing is they might not even get invites to many Ex Raids, and if they did, they still may not come away with the level 5 Pokemon. Additionally, the problem that has been sort of plaguing a lot of folks is that there aren't level 5 raids in more rural areas, so people are traveling sometimes a great distance to get to those raids at all. With the new Ex Raid invite system, however, you can invite one other player to come to the raid. Now that has to be an Ultra Friend, and an Ultra Friend is someone that you've had 90 days of playing contact. That's not just merely 90 consecutive days, that's 90 days in which you have played together in some appreciable way, which can be exchanging gifts, like you're seeing here on the screen now, it can be raiding, or it can be trading Pokemon. There were some issues with what was getting counted and what wasn't, so the general advice was to do more than one of those things on each day to count towards that rating. So as that friendship level goes up, people get more and more rewards for being friends, including XP, but if you raid together, you get more chances to catch the raid boss, greater Stardust, and generally, it's a way for Niantic and the Pokemon Company to kind of enforce some social parts of the game, and it generally works pretty well. So as you can see on the screen now, here was the Ex Raid invite for October 1st at 1 p.m., which was today. So the video footage here was previously recorded today at the raid. I don't currently have the setup to stream live from the phone, which requires 2 phones and a PC connection, and it's quite hectic. So the footage is from just a few hours ago. The Ex Raids are limited to specific types of gyms that are in specific places where people live. They tend to be in parks. If you ever check out any of the Trainer Tips YouTube channel, they go into pretty intense detail about how that's structured. We know that Niantic now uses open street maps from 2015 to determine what's a park and what's not. They use some of the old Ingress data, which was Niantic's first game, and the Ingress data would track things like cell phone usage, even from non-players because it's a Google product. So you tended to find things clustering at places like shopping malls, parking lots, gas stations, and some of those are still Pokemon hotspots. As Pokemon Go has became the main focus of Niantic's work, they've shifted that away from high traffic areas to places where they actually like people to be, like public parks. So all of your X-Raids are going to be at a place that was a public park circa 2015 and meets certain other criteria. So they have a grid system. Certain level gyms cannot be within a certain proximity of the other ones. But if you go to the OpenStreetMaps and you look at the data, if there's a beta right now for level 40 players who can submit new gyms. The old workaround used to be you had to also play Ingress and you could create new portals and those would port over to Pokemon. But they're starting a new beta system where level 40 players, which is currently the level cap for Pokemon Go, can submit new gyms. And if you pay attention to the grid system, then you can help create gyms which are conducive to that area and you can groom them for better play. We're currently just towards the end of a 7K egg event, where 7K eggs have a chance to hatch regionally exclusive Pokemon. So for North America, the regional exclusive has been Tauros in the first generation. So if you didn't know someone who had traveled there or traveled from there, or have a friend that you met up with, you didn't really have a strong chance of getting a Tauros at all. So we happened to travel to Scotland over the summer, and we took a bunch of Tauros with us, and we brought a bunch of Mr. Mimes back. And then the 7K egg event happened, in which you can now hatch Mr. Mime and Kangaskhan, the Asia-Pacific exclusive. So all of those things that we brought back are a little bit less valuable than they were before. But the 7K egg event is a really good chance for people to get some of those regional exclusives, like Farfetch'd, they might have otherwise not had a chance to get. The 7K egg event ends October 8th, so if you are playing or you're coming back as a player, you have a pretty narrow opportunity to still get those. Hatching your own regional exclusive is kind of a bummer because the regional exclusive, I think it's 3 to 7% of the egg hatches, and if that's your lucky 3 to 7% and it happens to be your own region, that kind of seems like a bummer. It would have been nice if there'd been some region lock that you wouldn't hatch your own regional exclusive. So as the EX Raid system has changed, now the Mewtwo are more prevalent, Niantic did want to reward players who had been involved previously. So the Mewtwo from before the switchover, which most people are now calling Legacy Mewtwo, had special moves that are no longer in Mewtwo's moveset, like Shadow Ball and Hyper Beam. Shadow Ball is probably the better one. It's sort of more widely usable as a shadow type attack. So all of the new Mewtwo's that you will get from the previous about 6 weeks are not going to ever be able to learn those moves. They're still valuable Pokemon to get, and it's still fun to go out and get Mewtwo. But it won't have that same specialty move, the charge move that the Legacy have. So as we set up for the X-Raid, the X-Raids, this has been another kind of sort of complaint about the game, is that they are, the raiding time is fixed. So the Pokemon Company is still really, and rightfully so, concerned about children who are playing the game. So raiding is between a narrow window. I think it's about 11 a.m. Eastern to about 5 p.m. Eastern, maybe 6, but it's not later. So if you work second or third shift, or your schedule is just such where your free time is not in that period, maybe you work all of those hours, it can be really difficult to get to some of those events. So today we had a really interesting mixture of folks who showed up for the X-Raid, and some of them took half days at work, some of them were taking slightly longer lunches, but the average age demographic is not 10 and 11-year-olds who might be wandering the street looking for digital monsters. That's, people who grew up playing the game who are now regular adults contributing to society and who really would like those raids to maybe go to 7 or 8 o'clock and give more people a chance to participate in that part of the game. Especially when it's a kind of a core part of the game, as there are certain Pokemon that you can only get through that process. Same problem with rural folks. We had one player a few weeks ago who came all the way from Logan County, West Virginia to raid in Morgantown because that's where the event was happening. If you're not familiar with West Virginia, Logan County is in the center of the state, and it's a good drive. Here in Morgantown, we're up near the top, about an hour south of Pittsburgh. So Niantic has done generally a pretty good job about responding to player requests. The ability to trade Pokemon was not originally there when the game launched. The raid system is new. And now you can invite players to the X-Raids, which is also great. It'll give more people an opportunity to do that. Both Heather and I received X Raid invites. We brought one other person along with us, and that was a person who might otherwise not have gotten a chance to go to that X Raid. So that's definitely a good feature, and I'm glad Niantic responded to people's requests for a bit more access to those type of games. So the new X Raid system focuses on Deoxys, and what's kind of neat about Deoxys as a raid boss is there are 4 different varieties that you have an opportunity to catch. Deoxys has like an attack mode, a defense mode, and a couple of others, and physically looks different for each of those modes. So of course it's in the X Raid, so you have to get those X Raid invites in order to have a chance to catch those Pokemon. So it's good to know what X Raid eligible gyms are in your area, so that you can make sure that you hit them on a pretty regular basis and maybe increase your chance of getting that. The thing that was maybe similar to that for Mewtwo in the Legacy X Raid system was the moveset. So there was Hyper Beam, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam maybe, and people were looking for those different movesets rather than to use a charge TM to change it, because you may not still have all of the options. So it's pretty neat that Niantic has offered new choices for X Raid invites, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that portion of the game. So the X Raid that we went to today is in a park. It's Krebs Park in Morgantown, and the raid can be accessed through several spots. Altogether, so this local area uses a Discord to coordinate playing and information about where raids are located, where wild Pokemon are spawning, and we had over 40 people checked in as interested for this X Raid, which is pretty neat. So we only have 20 as the max cap for individuals who can go. While we were there, we saw 3 groups go in, which means there's definitely more than that. SMP, if you'd like to redrop that, that link isn't clickable on the stream, but it might be in the chat. So SMP is reminding me that Deoxys has a normal, attack, defense, and speed forms. What's interesting about that is that the build out for which Pokemon are best changes for that. So but Pokemon Go has a function where you can pre-build a team to up to 5 that you can save ahead of time, and if you can build those teams, it might behoove you to build more than one for Deoxys, because you don't know what it's going to be until that egg drops. If you haven't participated in a raid, what happens is there's a notification that occurs and an egg, and you just know the general level. And once that egg hatches and once you get into the raid, you kind of see what you're working with as far as Deoxys go. What's interesting here is that the Pokemon that we now know as Meltan, or what the internet has dubbed Nutto, was supposed to sort of be a special one-time event about 30 minutes after the last community day, but we're still seeing it around occasionally, and there are still always Dittos. So there was a video that we talked about on my team channel a few days ago about Meltan, and potential predictions about how it will feature in Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. There's also a little Easter egg as the professors interacted with each other and mentioned both Eevee and Pikachu in that video. So it'll certainly be interesting. People are speculating that since we know we can trade Pokemon back and forth, that there might be some good reason to hold on to these Ditto that only appear as Meltan. So what also happened today is the event for the first generation Pokemon is officially over. So previous to this event, things like Bulbasaur were really pretty uncommon in the wild, and for the last month or so as part of the Ultra Rewards period, all of those first generation Pokemon have been literally everywhere. So if you didn't spend your time picking up as many Charmander as you could to evolve your Charizard, oh man, you missed the boat, because you were tripping over them. Almost every spawn was a hard-to-find Pokemon, which made some things a little bit more difficult. So I'm currently IV hunting Pidgeys for a long-term joke that I'm still stuck on. And it's been really hard to IV hunt Pidgeys because they used to be everywhere, and they were the easy evolution fodder for kind of grinding through XP and levels. But for the past few weeks, they've been pretty thin on the ground. So I'm kind of excited that the event is over, just kind of get back to the regular stuff, and maybe I can more successfully IV hunt Pidgeys for the return of Pidgey Patrol. I'm trying to get 600% IV Pidgeys to max out their progression, We've been putting Pidgeys up against Moltres, Articuno, Mewtwo, and they don't do well, but I think it's funny. So, more IV hunting of Pidgeys coming. Hopefully, as soon as those start, if we can find a nest locally, we'll maybe record some of my IV hunting of the Pidgeys as well. If you use any of the third-party apps that help calculate IVs, if you're not familiar with the IVs, they are independent variables or individual variables that are a hidden stat that every Pokemon has. There are 3 of them: attack, defense, and stamina. They range 0 to 15. At the short end of the scale, if they're all zeros, compared to if they're at the high end, they're all 15s. It's an 8% difference in CP by the time you power them up. It's not huge, but it deals with sort of how fast the Pokemon might dodge, how much damage you do, how resilient it is. And so a lot of people go out looking for high IV Pokemon. Since it's a hidden stat, you either have to do it longhand. The tables of what the known IV designations are available, and you can go through, use the appraise function. Depending on which team you've chosen, you'll get a specific set of verbiage that tells you about where those IVs are. You can use that to kind of cross-reference and get an idea for where it is. Or you can use a third-party app, some of them which you just enter manually, and it's basically a calculator or a graphical interface for something like an Excel spreadsheet. Other ones which previously actually interacted with the game. There was some Pokemon mapping third-party software that Niantic, the Pokemon company, decided violated their TOS. So if you really want the safest thing to do, you should either use one that you manually enter or that reads the screen, and there's sort of no way to shadow ban those users. So be careful about the TOS. There's been reports of lifetime bans or 10-year bans coming down. Some of them are shorter. Recently, a player was definitely violating the terms of service. They were basically selling their services as a proxy player, where you would give them this person your login information, and they would go do Mewtwo raids for you, and so they would find high IV Mewtwo's, and they charged for that, and that did not turn out well. They ended up with a lifetime ban from the game, and that happened within the last week. So if you're going to use an app that calculates IVs, better off to use one that doesn't violate the terms of service, one you either enter manually or simply read screen data. Here's another Meltan. Again, it's supposed to be a limited time Pokemon, but we still occasionally come across them. People were originally calling it Nutto because it looks like a Ditto on the bottom with a nut, but we now know that to be a melted metal. If you get a chance to hop on over to YouTube, one of the videos there is a short 2.5-minute discussion between Professor Oak and Professor Elm about Meltan and the history of that within the game, and it's pretty interesting. It's supposed to be a prehistoric Pokemon that has only recently been rediscovered. So if you haven't, if you've only played the Game Boy or other games for Pokemon, you may not exactly know how to get a Gyarados, so I don't really want to spoil that surprise, other than in Pokemon Go, it is a serious grind for candies. It ends up being a pretty decent Pokemon at the end, even if the IVs are not great, and once it's part of the Mew quest to evolve one, so it's definitely worthwhile. Sorry there, looks like we had a couple frame drops. Sorry folks, just solving a tech issue there for a second. If you had a chance to participate in the Ultra Rewards period, you'll notice that I'm entering this particular battle with 4 Articuno, legendary birds, and the Ultra Rewards period was a lot of fun, and it finished an entire summer's worth of exciting events for Pokemon Go, from fun Pikachus with hats to being able to pick up some of the legendary birds, which I missed out. I had left the game for a while and hadn't played, and was a returning player, and that was one of the things that brought me back in, and it's really been fun to be able to catch up on some of the things that I otherwise would have missed out on. But the Ultra Rewards period is rapidly coming to an end. Most of it is actually over now. They extended a few things like the 7K egg event until the 8th of October, but most of it has been over. But it's been a solid month to 6 weeks of additional rewards. Things like 4 times X experience bonuses, community days where you would hatch eggs 4 times faster than you would otherwise, increased Stardust and rewards bonus. It's been a really exciting time to rejoin Pokemon Go or to join for the first time. As we now enter into this new period of EX raids, it'll be interesting to see how long those stick around. Previously, Mewtwo has been since the inception of that part of the game. It'll be interesting to see how long Deoxys stays around, especially since there's 4 of them to catch now. The friend system is kind of a slow grind there. So the player that I just played with there, we're 90 play days away still from best friend. And again, that's not 90 consecutive days, that's 90 days of actually doing Pokemon Go friend activities. So what's really excellent about that is when you participate in things like the X Raid, you get additional chances to catch that raid boss, as we're going to see today. So when we get to the EX Raid, I actually have 2 portions of footage from today's EX Raid. One is my footage, and then I also have a little bit of Heather's as well. We had pretty different experiences, as it has been typical for EX Raids. So as we get in there, you'll see how that goes. One of the things that is definitely remarkable is that this level 5 raid seems a bit easier than they used to be. And the group we were playing with was pretty high-level players. I think, except for one exception, all the maybe 2 exceptions, all the players were over level 33. 40 again is the level cap. The levels, however, are not linear. Each level is exponentially harder to get to than the next. 50% of the game's playtime occurs between level 37 and level 40. So at level 33 or level 34, I think I'm about 20% of the way through all of the playtime of the game as it exists so far. So if that gives you kind of a scale for where that's at. But we had a smaller group than we have in the past, and the raid goes by pretty quickly. And I actually kind of hope that's indicative of the level 5. I hope the EX raid invites are more prevalent, and I hope that we have a chance to participate in more of them, especially with the invite system. That should definitely increase people's chances. And if there's 4 availabilities, I mean, we got to catch them all. So we really want all 4 varieties in that. So one of the things about the 7K egg event that people have needed to manage is if you roll through a Pokestop and spin the stop, one of the things you're likely to get are eggs, but they're not 7K eggs. The ones with the regional exclusives, I believe they're only coming from friend gifts. So you kind of have to curate, you can have 9 at any given time, and you have to curate which of those you have at the time. So if you have open egg slots and you can't open any more gifts, you don't want to open any more or spin any more Pokestops and potentially get a 2, a 5, or a 10K egg, which is just going to be regular and outside of the event window. So again, you have until October 8th to make use of that, and it looks like we're about to get into some of the X-Raid footage here pretty soon. This was the invite, and one of the changes is towards the center of the screen. You can see there's actually a button for invite. Now that has to be an Ultra Friend, which is a person you've played with significantly, so it can't just be a person that you met once or twice and played with casually. It's someone that you've intentionally played with pretty frequently, and rating seems to be one of the ways that that moves up the quickest. So here we have the X-Raid egg ready to hatch. We're about 14 seconds out at this point. Like all of the raids, it starts off as an egg and you're not quite sure what it is. Our group uses a Discord to let people know what level eggs are where and how far along the timer is, which can be useful. So you might get a notification that, hey, there's a level 4 raid within maybe a half mile of you and you've got 22 minutes to get there, which is kind of an interesting way to organize that. So this is Deoxys. Whenever you participate in a raid like this, they are way, way more powerful than they would be otherwise. You saw this one was 45,000 plus CP, and that's quite a lot. So here we've got a good number of players. A lot of them are the blue team, Team Mystic. That will help us out with additional attempts to catch Deoxys at the end, should we beat the Pokemon. I tried to focus on some dark moves for this. There were breakdowns that you can use for which Pokemon are more advantageous against others. but you don't know whether you're going to come up against the attack speed or other varieties of it. But it's always nice to start off with a Legacy Shadow Ball Mewtwo, which is the only Mewtwo that I have from the old Ex Raid system. So the Ex Raid, you have a limited amount of time to defeat the Pokemon. You can see we're at 280 seconds here, but he already looks down to be down about 20%. So this is going pretty darn quick, and it's going pretty well. So I'm on my second Pokemon here, and now the third. SMP says Mystic for life. I got browbeaten into being Team Mystic, but it's been pretty good for playing thus far. They definitely are dominant in this area, which certainly helps for additional chances to catch bosses like this. So as you can see, we still have 240 plus seconds on the clock, and we're down to less than 10% there. So this was a really fast raid. And that's what you want to see. Final death move, and now a chance to catch that Pokemon. Lots of friendship level increases, which is definitely good. Golden Raspberries increase your chance to catch. All the various potions heal. Revive brings a fainted Pokemon back. And Stardust rewards. I was using a lucky egg, so I had 2 times the experience there. So that was 20,000 XP. Because we're Team Mystic, we get 3 additional attempts since we did the majority of the damage. I don't know if it starts off as 1. I don't think it shifts. I think Arminius asks if Deoxys changes in the battle, and I don't think that's the case. So I didn't have as much of a problem this time. I've been having a recurring issue for special events and raid bosses where my Pokeballs don't seem to make it into the top third of the screen. They actually look like they're bouncing off of something. It happened a couple times in these throws, but the other time I couldn't throw a curveball to save my life for these events. But ones like that were working all right. So you have special raid balls. So typically when the game you have regular Pokeballs, Great Balls, and Ultra Balls, each of which has an increased chance to catch the Pokemon in question. For raids, that's not the case. You're issued these special raid balls, and you have a limited number of them. So the only ways that you can adjust your ability to catch them is by using things like Golden Raspberries, which you want to do for every throw, using Curve Balls, which slightly increase, and also as that aiming circle gets smaller, it goes from nice to great to excellent. That increases the catch likelihood as well. It helps if your ball actually goes far enough, but in that case it did not. Arminius says no, they've only released the attacks so far in Ex Raids. The other ones are not yet available. I haven't seen that, and I don't know if there's a timeline for that, but that would kind of make sense. Today was really only the first day at all for the new Ex Raids, so there's not really a whole lot that we know about how that's going to go for the next period for which that Pokemon is the Ex Raid boss. So it's good they give you Golden Raspberries because you need to use one for every throw of the game. Throwing curved Great Balls are excellent. Curved Balls will definitely increase your chance. That was not really working for me here today, though. So I've got 3 more attempts. But again, these Ex Raid boss or level 5 bosses, their catch rate is about 47% at the most. If you do nothing but throw straight balls without any special addition, it only has a 6% catch rate chance. So it's just not something that happens every time. I'm pretty much at a solid 50% for most raid bosses. That's been the case for the past 2 months. And a dodge. And that was it. That was the last attempt. So now we have some of Heather's footage from her Ex Raid. So we were raiding together in the same group, and she had a little bit better luck catching Deoxys than I did, and so we'll get to her footage now. What's interesting about the way that Android and iPhone capture game footage differently, iPhone actually does it natively. The newer Samsung does as well with something called Game Tools, but it's just straight up native for iPhone. You just have to turn it on to add it to your settings screen. So like we said earlier, Deoxys is new to the game. It's from a much newer generation of Pokemon, and now that they're the Ex Raid boss, that's definitely the one to try to get. That was a crazy wind-up there, Heather. It's like a figure-8 spiral wind-up. So I actually haven't seen Heather's game footage yet, so this is the first time I'm seeing this as well today. So as you throw these balls, it closes, and then they wiggle. And after the third wiggle, if everything's going well, after the third wiggle, a little bit of time passes, and that means you get it. So if you're throwing them and it's jumping out before even one wiggle, that's pretty tough. The additional wiggles sort of give you that feeling of like waiting and waiting and waiting. The game actually has already predetermined whether that throw is going to catch the Pokemon or not. There are some exploits with doing complicated screen mechanisms that allow you to skip some of those animations, but most of the time it's easier just to kind of wait and watch, because they tend to require a lot of dexterity. It's like a 3-fingered action to try to skip those animations. Now, if you're at a community day, each one of those animations, I think at the end, someone counted them, they're like 17 seconds. So if you're capturing hundreds of Pokemon in the day, those 17 seconds add up. Yeah, the defensive moves are difficult to predict. Oh man, I accidentally cropped out your appraisal there. So the appraise function is based on your team and allows you to know about what the IVs are for each Pokemon. But I wasn't paying attention and actually accidentally cropped that out of this video, so I couldn't see what the appraisal was. Typically, the level 5 raid bosses, the IVs are north of 80%, so it's probably up there. I was pretty bummed out. I didn't get Deoxys today, so hopefully we'll get more Ex Raid invites. So we decided to hit up a couple other things on the way back. So I was on lunch break, and so my lunch still had a little bit. So we swung by to do a Kiralia raid, and we actually ran into one of the other players from our Ex Raid again at this one. So that was kind of fun. All right. Arminius says 89% IVs. So for the easy way to talk about IVs, since there are 3 different stats that can range from 0 to 15, is by their percentile of all of them together. So 89% was, 12s, 14s, and 15s, and gives you just a general feel, although not as specific. So you might have a Pokemon that actually has a low percentile, could be as low as in the 40s, and their one attack might actually be maxed out at 15. So the percentile misses that distinction, but it can still be a useful way to keep track. In fact, if you use Pokegenie, the newest version for Android, will automatically copy a custom name to your phone's clipboard, so you can change the name to the Pokemon's name, and then a superscript single Unicode character number for the percentile IV. So here we had 16 chances to catch Kiralia, which certainly would have been helpful back at the X Raid before. So the 3 of us took this raid down pretty easily. But again, candies for candy fodder are good. And I believe there's going to be another evolution of Kiralia before too long. So I think it's in the next generation of Pokemon that should hit the game. So just like the X Raids, you have to use the specific raid balls, but obviously when you're down around a level 3 raid, it's much, much easier than a level 5. So attention, defense, impressed. So that puts that IV north of 60, but not into the highest category of north of 80% if you're Team Mystic. There were 2 Pokemon here in this yellow gym, so we decided to tear it down on the way back and hopefully get some coins. So one of the ways in Pokemon that you can acquire new items is by purchasing them in the store for the in-game currency. You can either convert actual currency, or you can win in-game currency by holding gyms for specific periods of time. So if you aren't interested in spending any money to play the game, then you can fight for gyms, and you can get up to 50 a day. So it would take you 4 days of maxing out to get one of these, say, super incubators for the eggs, which have the time that it takes to catch or to hatch a given Pokemon. My general thought is, if I get a lot of enjoyment out of the game, it's a lot of fun. If it costs me about a movie ticket worth a month, I think that's a fair trade for something that I probably spend a lot of time on. So a lot of people don't like to pay for mobile games for that reason, But mobile gaming is changing pretty significantly, especially in the last couple years. So if you've been watching Twitch for the last week, you'll see that there was a PUBG Mobile invitational. So that's professional level cash award mobile gaming right there. So as the phones get better and better and the technology gets better, I think that we'll see a lot more mobile games that are a little bit more interesting than just Snake or Two Dots. Two Dots is a lot of fun, but mobile gaming is not what it was 5 years ago. Yep, SMP says we'll see the next evolution in Gen 4. What's interesting about sort of the interactions for gyms is that you have to reduce the Pokemon's CP, equivalent to damage basically and power, and that often takes multiple cycles through the gym. So generally, if you're going to sit there and take down a gym, it means you're going to be in there for probably 4 or 5 cycles of fighting however many are there. It might be 1, it might be 2 as in this case, or it might be full and be 5. And it can be a quick venture or quite a long one. One of the things that you can do if your Pokemon are in a gym and they've been damaged through this process, you can actually remotely heal them a little bit by using berries. If you use a golden raspberry, it actually heals them up 100%, which I just recently learned, which radically changed the way that I fed berries to gyms. When you first put them in, they're actually not quite at 100%, so it's good to toss a berry there right away. And then as you check in on them, you can refill their heart for CP throughout the day. When you're fighting in gyms, you definitely want to pay attention to good defenders for the gym. So things like Chansey or Snorlax do really well in the gym. So some people use the gym to show off rare Pokemon they've caught. Occasionally they end up with a theme. Sometimes you'll be traveling around your town and you'll find a gym that's like all shiny Pokemon or all evolutions. And that's just kind of a fun thing that the community does. Like, oh, hey, there's a shiny Pokemon in here. I've got a shiny Pokemon. And then before long, it's an entire collection gym of shiny Pokemon. So it's definitely kind of a fun thing to walk around and happen upon and discover. I've really been trying to curate the 7K egg event. And still, these regular Alolan Pokemon, they're about a 75% hatch rate. So that's still the most of what you're getting, but you have that 3 to 7% chance of getting a regional exclusive, like Kangaskhan from the Asia Pacific region. This is one of the Pokemon that was really going to hold people up from North America, unless you had someone who was traveling from there. It's great that this event allowed people to pick those up. Arminius is letting us know that as you feed them, the berries can max out, and when they max out, they will get tired of that particular Pokemon, or that particular berry, and you can switch berry types, which is definitely effective for healing those guys if you're running out of berries for that purpose. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, this was the first look at the new X Raids from Pokemon Go. This was day 1 of the new X Raids for Deoxys, and we look forward to a good season of being able to pick up at least hopefully get all 4 forms of those. Hopefully I'll get one at all before too long. Keeping up my solid 50% catch rate for these. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thanks again for LPGWV for hosting me on the main channel. And please stay tuned. At 9 o'clock we have the opening session of Hearthstone for the new season. SMP is going to be holding that down. So don't go too far and tune in at 9 o'clock again. Thanks. Please follow us on LPGWV. And also all our team members who are contributing to the main channel. You can follow their team channels as well. I'm LPGWV Kevin. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.